Hi class, in this video we are going to discuss the domain and range of a rational function. So what is domain and what is range? So as you are familiar or as we discussed in our previous videos, domain of a function is the set of all values that the variable x can take. So there are restrictions daw na pwede nating i-substitute or ipalit or i-input sa isang function. So specifically, in a rational function as defined in a rational function of f of x with a form of p of x over q of x, sabi daw dito is that aside that your p of x and q of x are polynomial functions, dapat din daw po your q of x should not be a zero function. So, dapat hindi siya maging zero function if you substitute any input or if you input any value of x. The q of x daw o yung ating polynomial function in the denominator should not be a zero function. Why? Kasi obviously, if you have a denominator which is equal to 0, your whole function will be undefined. So that is one of the restriction of our domain, specifically for a rational function. So dun yun nag-originate. Next po is the range. The range of a function is the set of all values that f of x can take. So f of x, take note lang po natin that f of x is also equal to y. So set of all values that y can take. So, if ang range po natin and ang ating domain are sets, so definitely, we will write it in three forms. So, ideally, a set can be written or represented in this following. So, dati, nung kayo ay grade 7, if you can still recall, you can list all the values or tinatawag nating roster format, or pwede naman i-represent po siya using a set builder form or notation, yung may ganitong symbol which is read as such that. So, halimbawa dito is that if you have the function d of x as x such that x is an element of a real number, ito po yung ating symbol for real number, where x is greater than or equal to 10 but less than or equal to 20. So that is how you represent or you write, instead of listing all the possible values between 10 and 20, you just represent it or write it in a set builder notation. And another thing is writing it or representing it in an interval notation. So, in an interval notation, if you have a function of f of x over x minus 3, so you can conclude daw that the domain is negative infinity, comma 3, union of 3, comma positive infinity. So, interval notation, of course, nanggaling din po yan sa concept ng interval na nasa number line. So, kung dito, 3 ang kanyang naging limitation at 0.3 daw, so you can observe that yung interval notation mo naka-bracket yung 3. So, it implies that hindi kasama yung 3. So, kung mayroon kang number line, ayan, and then at 0.3, meron ka dyang bilog na empty. And then as you go to the right, as your value increases to positive infinity, so ito yung masasabi nating 3, infinity. Then, dito sa left side naman po, as you approach to negative infinity, ito yung ating interval which is negative infinity, 3. So, union lang po yan. Union of the left side and the right side. That is already a representation of all the values or all the possible values of your domain. So, pwede mo siya isulat ng set builder or interval notation. So, hindi lang po applicable yung roster format or yung pag-i-enumerate natin ng lahat ng values kasi kung tutuusin from numbers between 0 to 1 pa lang, there are infinite numbers. Now, let's proceed in finding the domain for each examples. So, let's have our example number 1. Find the domain and range of the rational function. So, specifically, domain po muna tayo. So, we have our function f of x is equal to 2x minus 3 all over x squared. So when you say domain daw, your primary concern is yung denominator mo should not be equal to 0. So what we're going to do to find the domain of a function, specifically in a rational function, we are going to equate our denominator. So solution x squared is equal to 0. Now let's try to solve for our x. So by squaring both sides, so you will cancel out yung exponent mo dito. Then you will have x is equal to the square root of 0, which is equal to 0. So ibig sabihin daw, when your x is 0, your x squared will become 0. So ito yung pinakabawal natin. So your x should not be equal to 0. So domain, if we are going to write it as a whole in a set builder notation, magiging x such that x is a set of real numbers where x is not equal to 0. So yun yung restriction ng ating domain, or in an interval form, that is negative infinity, comma 0, union of 0, comma positive infinity. So this is now the domain for our example number 1. Now let's have our second example. If we have now the f of x, x minus 2 all over x plus 2. So, ganun din po ang step. We are just going to equate our denominator into 0. Solution. So, x plus 2 is equal to 0. Then, simplify by solving for our x value. So, you will have, i-transpose lang po natin ng ating positive 2. You will have negative 2. So, at the value of negative 2, your denominator will be equal to 0. So, yan ang pinakabawal mong maging value ng denominator. So, ng iyong domain rather. So, magiging domain mo ay the set of real numbers such that your x is not equal to negative 2. In interval naman, negative infinity, comma negative 2, union of negative 2, comma positive infinity. So, ayan. So, this is now the solution for, or the domain for our f of x is equal to x minus 2 all over x plus 2. Then, last, if we have f of x is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 4 all over x plus 1. So, same lang po ng ating ginawa kanina. We just have to equate our denominator into 0. So, solution, you have x plus 1 is equal to 0. So, our x now should not be equal to negative 1 because it will make your denominator equal to 0. So, therefore, our domain is x such that x is a set of real number wherein your x should not be equal to negative 1. Or negative infinity, negative 1, union of negative 1, positive infinity. So, that's it po for the video in finding the domain. Now, in our next video, we are going to discuss naman how to find the range of the rational functions.